Good afternoon and welcome to the National Capital Planning Commission's May 5th, 2022 open session. Our first item of business, Ms. Koster, can you please take the roll?
Yes, Commissioner Steingasser.
Here.
Yes, Commissioner McMahon.
I'm here.
Thank you. Commissioner May.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Argo.
I'm here.
Thank you. Chair White.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Wright.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Dixon. Commissioner Cash. Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Thank you. And Commissioner Davenport.
Here.
Thank you. I'll note that Marcel Acosta, the Executive Director, Ann Schuyler, General Counsel, and Diane Sullivan with the Urban Design and Plan Review Division are also in the meeting.
Thank you. Noting the presence of a quorum, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today's meeting is live streamed and will be available in a few days as a video on NCPC's website. If there is no objection, the agenda as posted is adopted as the order of business. And now we will play a short video clip of the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
NCPC's offices are currently under renovation, so NCPC will continue to conduct its meetings online until this work is complete. We also are continuing to monitor public health requirements for in-person gatherings. I want to share how we will be conducting commission business. During commission deliberations, I will use a round-robin format to ask each commissioner if they have any questions. As a reminder, during deliberations, all commissioners should be on video during that time, unless you are experiencing technical issues. At other times, when commissioners wish to be recognized, they should unmute and ask to be recognized. Next, agenda item 2 is the report of the chair. Commissioners will have the opportunity for some in-person field trips during the month of June in advance of several applications coming from the commission later this year. Ms. Koster will be contacting you regarding a visit to Arlington National Cemetery and Henderson Hall, adjacent sites in Virginia. And we will also have an opportunity to visit Union Station. We are receiving an information presentation today on Union Station from staff, and a field trip is proposed to that site in advance of proposals being submitted later this year. Field trips provide such a great way to understand proposed plans and projects, so I hope you will be able to attend. Agenda item 3 is the report of the Executive Director, Mr. Acosta.
Thank you, Chair White, and good afternoon. Our next online public meeting for the Pennsylvania Avenue Initiative Concepts is scheduled for Saturday, May 21st at 10 a.m. Further information and a link to register for the meeting are available on our website. We're also accepting public comments on the Pennsylvania Avenue Initiative through July 13th. In addition, the public comment period for the draft monumental core streetscape design guidelines will conclude on Wednesday, May 11th. We also invite the public to submit comments on the guidelines via our website. The commissioners do have a complete report in your packets, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Acosta. Does the commission have any questions? Hearing none, agenda item 4 is the legislative update. Ms. Schuyler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have one item to report. It's House of Representatives Bill 3525, which is entitled Commission to Study the Potential Creation of a National Museum of Asian Pacific American History and Culture. The bill establishes a commission to study the potential creation of the National Museum, and the commission is required to report recommendations for a plan of action for the establishment and maintenance of the museum, develop a fundraising plan, and obtain an independent review of this fundraising plan. The House passed the bill on April 26, 2022, and referred it to the Senate the following day, April 27th, 2022. This concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does the commission have any questions for Ms. Schuyler? Hearing none, let's move on to agenda item number 5, which is the consent calendar. There are 2 items on this month's consent calendar. The first is for approval of preliminary and final site development plans for the DC Clean Rivers Potomac River Tunnel project. This project was submitted by the National Park Service. The second item is for approval of preliminary and final site development plans for the Korean War Veterans Memorial Wall of Remembrance donor signage. This was submitted by the National Park Service. Are there any questions or discussion on the consent calendar items? Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved. Commissioner
Thank you. I think that was Commissioner,
May.
there you are, Commissioner May. Is there a second?
A second.
I think that was Commissioner Steingasser who seconded. Nope, I didn't get the voice. I'm sorry.
It was me, Linda Argo.
Thank you, Commissioner Argo. Ms. Coster, can you please confirm the motion and the second and take the vote by roll call?
Certainly. The motion was made by Commissioner May. The second was by Commissioner Argo. And with that, Commissioner Steingasser,
Yes.
Commissioner McMahon,
Yes.
Commissioner May,
Yes.
Commissioner Argo,
Yes.
Chair White,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Abstain.
and Commissioner Davenport.
Yes.
Well, thank you. The motion is carried. Next, we have an information presentation, agenda item 6A. This is NCPC's recently released Equity Action Plan, and we're really looking forward to hearing about this important work from Ms. Gebbe.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Today, I'll be providing an overview of the agency's Equity Action Plan, discuss progress and next steps, and get feedback from the commission. On President Biden's first day of office, he signed Executive Order 13985, which charges the federal government to pursue a comprehensive approach to advancing equity for all, including people of color and others who have been historically marginalized, underserved, marginalized, and adversely affected by persistent poverty and inequality. The White House calls this effort a generational commitment that will require sustained leadership and partnership with all communities. On April 14th, over 90 federal agencies publicly released their plans to address systemic barriers to prosperity and equality. Before we present NCPC's plan, we've asked Shaibia Dalal, a senior equity fellow in the Executive Office of the President, to share the Biden administration's whole of government approach and give you all a broader understanding of this historic initiative. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Dalal.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Visrat, and good afternoon, Chair White and Commissioners. Thank you so much for having me today. As Visrat mentioned, I'm a Senior Equity Fellow at OMB at the Office of Management and Budget, and I have the honor of working at OMB and with DPC to advance and lead implementation of this equity executive order across federal agencies. The President's order presents a one-of-a-kind opportunity in the history of this nation to define, commit, and invest in real change to improve the lives of all Americans. The order set a bold and transformative vision for advancing an ambitious whole of government equity agenda that matches the scale of the challenges we face as a country and the opportunities that we have to build a more perfect union. And in response to this vision, over 90 federal agencies across the federal government, including all cabinet level agencies and more than 50 independent agencies like NCPC that voluntarily chose to follow the executive order. All of these agencies mobilized quickly and effectively to implement the order. Agencies organized equity teams. They participated in a cross-agency equity learning community and conducted equity assessments of their agency's programs and services to uncover where systemic barriers to access may exist. Given that this assessment was very much a first step, we asked agencies to prioritize 3 to 5 programs and services that were closely aligned with their mission and delivered high impact as measured by number of customers served or another metric. So using those findings from the assessment and under guidance from OMB and DPC, the Domestic Policy Council, agencies developed their first ever equity action plans for starting to address and achieve equity in their mission delivery for all Americans. These equity action plans were required to include accountability mechanisms and to identify success metrics and key milestones to track progress. Having more than 90 federal agencies release their inaugural historic equity action plans was a big accomplishment last month. And we've made them all available for public viewing at performance.gov/equity in case you'd like to take a look at what other agencies are proposing and have begun implementing. So that was a very quick snapshot of the tremendous amount of work that agencies undertook pursuant to this executive order. At the same time, at OMB, we were ensuring that the president's budget made critical investments in equity and that agencies were also embedding equity within their budget requests, their strategic plans, learning agendas, and other regular performance and planning deliverables. Because ultimately, we want to institutionalize and codify this kind of work outside of any one EO and frankly, beyond any one administration. We want equity to not just be a set of values, but to be reflected in concrete outcomes that are tied to regulatory, policy, budget, and other decision-making processes. Last year was very much a sprint to meet deadlines and deliverables, but we know that equity work is a marathon. This will be a long-term and iterative journey, and these equity action plans are one important step forward. They're part of the administration's broader equity agenda, which also includes implementing the first ever national strategy on gender equity, working to ensure that federal government is a model for diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in the federal workforce, delivering environmental justice through the Justice 40 initiative, advancing voting rights and LGBTQ+ civil rights, and a lot more. If you're interested in learning about the administration's broader equity agenda, as well as other accomplishment in areas like equitable procurement, equitable infrastructure, equitable COVID response, or climate justice, you can check out whitehouse.gov/equity. And I'll make sure that staff has both of these links and can share them with you afterwards. So I know that was a lot of background, but hopefully it helps provide greater context for NCPC's equity work. And I have to commend NCPC on the agency's equity action plan, not only because you're an independent agency and chose to participate in this critical work, but because you all did so in such a thoughtful, intentional, and clear way. Commissioners, as you'll see in Bisrat's presentation next, the action plan for NCPC reflects much of what we as OMB and the administration want federal equity work to be about. The plan recognizes and applies the key distinction between equality and equity. It gives voice to narratives left out of the commemorative landscape. It builds equity into foundational planning frameworks to enable agencies to ask the right questions. And the plan reinvigorates community engagement. NCPC and this equity plan are certainly poised to have a profound impact on the national capital region at the local level. I know my colleagues at OMB and DPC would join me in saying that working with your agency's equity team was a pleasure, and I hope the team is proud of this work. OMB is here to continue being a partner to agencies on advancing equity. We recognize the unprecedented nature and urgency of this effort, and that means building new muscles and adopting new approaches right now in federal government. I'll end by reiterating what Bisrat said, that advancing equity is a generational commitment that will require sustained leadership and partnership with all agencies and communities. This is not a problem that can be solved tomorrow or by one executive order, but the administration is committed to holding agencies accountable for results and doing the work. and doing the work so that it lasts long after any of us are in our roles or in our offices. I look forward to seeing the presentation and hearing your reactions to NCPC's Equity Action Plan. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much, Ms. Dalal, for being here today, for giving us that overview, and also for your kind remarks about our efforts. Can everyone still see the presentation?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Excuse me for 1 second. All right. Last September, I shared the agency's approach for advancing equity, which is to identify who's being impacted by our policies, practices, and procedures, determine the extent to which our work has presented barriers to equity, eliminate those barriers, and minimize any negative impact by updating our policies and practices to ensure equitable treatment, and evaluate the outcomes of those efforts regularly. Here's a look at our timeline. In September, we presented to the Commission and convened a cross-divisional equity working group. In January, we submitted our final plan, and in April, we released it to the public along with over 90 other federal agencies. NCPC's plan seeks to advance equity through its core work programs and partnerships with federal and local agencies. For developing the plan, OMB advised all agencies to focus on a few priority areas. And these are the priority areas that we selected. I'll go over each one individually. First, we have Beyond Granite. NCPC is partnering with the Trust for the National Mall and the National Park Service on this demonstration program that aims to broaden subject matter representation and elevate underrepresented stories through a series of temporary commemorative works. It also seeks to create an inclusive and equitable process by expanding and exploring opportunities for public participation and commemoration in the nation's capital. The findings will inform updates to plans and guidance used for NCPC's commemoration initiative, including the Memorials and Museums Master Plan and policies in the visitor and commemoration element in the comprehensive plan. The pilot program is in development, and staff will update the Commission later this year on progress and how equity considerations have been integrated throughout program development, including the selection process and public engagement. For the comprehensive plan, NCPC will update the introduction chapter to revise the guiding principles and set forth a vision for addressing equity throughout the federal elements in later updates. Staff have begun research efforts to update the introduction chapter, which will be finalized this year. NCPC will also develop an equity crosswalk of all existing comprehensive plan policies that focus on advancing equity. And the agency will incorporate equity considerations into element updates, including the federal urban design element, federal workplace element, federal environment element, and visitors and commemoration element, which are all in the pipeline. Updating these elements will include acknowledging the existing policies in the comprehensive plan that have created barriers to underserved communities, finding opportunities to eliminate and or reduce those barriers, and incorporating federal and regional data sets that have been disaggregated by race, income, and other factors. Lastly, NCPC will develop a robust public engagement strategy for element updates that engages historically underserved communities. That's important to note here how our work is interrelated. These changes to the comprehensive plan will inform how equity is integrated into the FCIP and master plan and project review, which I'll describe further. So for the FCIP, site selection and capital improvement funding can have profound equity impacts, and the FCIP really offers the earliest opportunity for agencies to consider them. NCPC is already proactively working with the OMB to incorporate equity-related questions for applicants to answer for NCPC review to determine how proposed capital improvement projects might create or reduce equity disparities. NCPC and the OMB have already piloted these new questions, along with questions related to climate change impacts, which were discussed with the Commission earlier this year. Based on initial responses, it appears that agencies have different capacities and familiarity with determining equity impacts and engaging with local jurisdictions and community groups. At the end of this fiscal year, staff will work with the OMB to evaluate and refine the questions. And for next year's submission cycle, the responses will be factored into the FCIP project scorecard. NCPC will also engage with federal agencies and provide information and resources to help them consider equity earlier in the planning process of capital investments. Having these conversations and reviews at an early stage before preparing detailed plans for construction or making commitments to acquire land can help make it easier to influence equitable project outcomes. One of the tools NCPC is using in the updates to the FCIP questions is COG's equity emphasis areas, which identifies higher concentrations of low-income individuals and minority populations and helps planners to better understand regional conditions. Representatives from COG have presented this tool to the Commission before, and based on the initial FCIP responses, staff have learned that it's been helpful for applicant agencies to use this tool. Equity emphasis areas are also one of the many tools staff will use to update the comprehensive plan. For review of master plans and significant projects, NCPC will develop equity-related resources and tools to help applicants identify equity issues. This includes relevant policies in the comprehensive plan, mapped identification of underserved communities and equity emphasis areas, and the development of distribution lists to contact impacted groups. NCPC will amend the submission guidelines to include equity screening questions for applicants to answer. NCPC will use these questions to evaluate the plan or project for equity considerations and public outreach in its staff reports presented to the Commission. The NCPC will also amend the submission guidelines to encourage applicants to conduct public outreach earlier in the development of their projects and better include underserved communities. Staff will also need to meet with applicant agencies to understand their own efforts to advance equity in response to this executive order and see how to work together moving forward. As a reminder, staff have already started meeting with federal agencies through the agency's, staff have already started meeting with federal facilities through the agency's outreach initiative launched last summer. This initiative seeks to engage NCPC staff and the Commission with federal partners earlier in the planning and development process. It also offers the opportunity to initiate discussions around equity and connect local jurisdictions and federal facility representatives. For the Equity Action Plan, we focused on public engagement with Commission meetings. However, the agency is also working on developing a public participation plan so that action items I'll outline here are also a part of those broader efforts. NCPC will identify and meet with organizations from underserved communities individually or in focus group settings to discuss NCPC's activities and opportunities to eliminate barriers and increase participation. The agency will explore how technology can assist or be a barrier to more equitable participation. We're working to develop a hybrid meeting model that enables public comment and testimony by both virtual participation and in-person attendance. NCPC will expand the agency's contact list to better include groups and representatives from underserved communities in the National Capital Region. And lastly, review and update public meeting materials and outreach tools to determine ways to make it easier for the public and specifically underrepresented communities to access and understand Commission meeting materials and provide input. NCPC is also gearing up to celebrate its centennial in 2024. As part of the agency's celebration, NCPC will examine the legacy of planning and development in the region and specifically NCPC's role, explore where planning efforts resulted in inequitable outcomes and how that shapes communities today, and also explore how the agency and others are working to rectify those impacts. In terms of next steps, our equity working group is leading the charge to refine and implement these action items. We also plan on conducting training with commissioners and staff to ground us all in equity issues and ensure that equity considerations are addressed in projects and plans reviewed by the Commission. Lastly, the Biden administration also issued a different executive order, that's Executive Order 14035, to ensure that the federal workplace is a model for diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. That executive order is more so focused on internal workplace practices and workforce culture. Our response dovetails with our work on this executive order 13985, which is focused on our external facing work programs. So we'll be coordinating our efforts on both responses. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Mesgebi and Ms. Dalal. It was really helpful to hear the overview and how we're doing across the spectrum of the 90 agencies. Very impressive work, and I appreciate your leadership. And thank you, Ms. Mesgebi, for such a thorough presentation. And now I'd love to open it up for questions. Does any commissioner have a question before we begin the discussion? Well, I will open it up. Oh, Commissioner Davenport.
I had a question, just how you see this work affecting like commission decision making on projects, and how some of the outcomes of this work are actually going to be presented to the board for potential decision points.
I think it's probably best yet, Diana, if I don't mind having you answer that question first.
Oh, sure. And I see Marcel there as well. You know, I think one of the biggest things that we'll see with the projects, and this, you know, these are things that we already do, but we really want to focus on in terms of, I think, site selection projects, which we don't have very often, but, you know, I think that's really important to look at the impacts significantly is in terms of how they're impacting the communities around them. We now have the equity emphasis areas map, and we're well aware of that. So we'll be working with local jurisdictions on how to do that. So I think you will see it play a much stronger role in our staff's analysis to the commission. The other thing that you'll probably see more often is with the master plans that are coming in. We're in a process right now where a lot of master plans are coming in out in the counties, especially in Prince George's County. And there are equity emphasis areas there, and we'll be looking at, you know, traffic is going to be a big impact. So the cumulative effects of all of these, the intensification of all these master plans. And I think that's probably where you're going to see it first, and we'll be talking to that in our reports. So that's just a snapshot. I mean, there's a lot of other areas too, but that's the one that comes to mind very quickly is transportation.
And I'll just add a couple more things. For instance, with the Federal Capital Improvements Program, which Ms. Rock laid out in the presentation, we've already brought the questions to the commission at a previous meeting, and in July, you'll be able to see the results of the answers that that were presented by the various agencies prior to the time you adopt the Federal Capital Improvements Program. Also with a comprehensive plan introduction section, which we anticipate bringing in to the commission as a draft towards the end of this year. You also have an opportunity to comment on that. And obviously that will have to be adopted by the commission when it becomes final. So there are going to be various steps along the way for each of these products that the commission will have an opportunity to comment on, and ultimately it is your action to adopt them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cash.
Yeah, I was just wondering how you foresee this applying to several of the district projects that that go to NCPC for its approval. It usually turns out going on the consent agenda. I'm just wondering to what extent are you going to look at the local issues, or are you just really going to try and confine this to the federal matters when it comes to district projects?
Director Acosta, you want to answer?
I'll take it. Well, there's a siren going off right now. Just give me a minute. This is mostly focused on federal actions. We know that the district, of course, has its own equity process that it's using through both this legislature as well as their own executive. So we haven't defined that fully, but I suspect that we will probably not comment specifically on that because those are in fact local actions.
I'll just add that on that note, one of the first things we will be doing is talking with each of the jurisdictions, including the district, in terms of what their outreach is and how they're looking at projects, trying to figure out if so if we work through the local jurisdictions, or are we as applicants and as the commission reaching out specifically to the jurisdiction? So we're trying to figure that out right now, but that's like step one that we'll be working on the next couple of months.
Thank you. Commissioner Steingasser.
Yes, thank you, Jim. I'm just saying, so many of the projects that come to NCPC from the district are zoning or development related. And through our comprehensive plan adoption, we've been charged to also provide a racial equity lens to how we evaluate projects. So that'll be built into the analysis that gets forwarded to NCPC as well.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, I would like to open it up for discussion, and I would ask that all the commissioners turn on their cameras. And today I'd like to start with Commissioner May. Commissioner May?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great.
You'd think I would know exactly where the Zoom controls are, but I don't do enough Zoom meetings, I guess. I need to do more Zoom meetings. I don't really have much to say about it. I appreciate the fact that the NCPC has gone through the effort of codifying how we will address the equity issues that are so pressing in Washington and in the area and in the country generally. And I think this is a solid framework for doing that. And I appreciate the efforts of Ms. Gabi and others who have contributed to this. So that's about all I have to say. Is thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Argo.
Hey, yeah, I would only, my only question, and it doesn't have to be answered now. I could talk to, I'd be happy to just talk to one of the staff members about this too. I'm interested where the communication will be within the government of the District of Columbia about these issues, which will be the agencies, if that's plural, that the staff would be working with.
Director Acosta, do you want to take a stab at that now, or do you want to talk later? I understand it'll be an ongoing process.
Yeah, it is an ongoing process. If you're talking about our conversations with other district agencies, obviously there is I believe there's an office within the council that deals with equity issues, as well as with the mayor's office. We're always in touch with the Office of Planning and a lot of our other sister agencies throughout the government. So I think we still need to kind of sort through how that will work in terms of our review of projects, as well as making sure that we're consistent, especially with the comprehensive plan and its issues, because I think that's the one area where we do share common concerns and policies. So that's one area that I think even within our crosswalk, we'll probably try to address to make sure that we're consistent, or at least addressing or informed by some of the district's own policies, and also where to kind of draw that line, which I think is hugely important.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Argo, any further comments?
No, no further comments. Just I would appreciate being kept abreast of that a little bit of that communication, like whoever the central point is, or point person on the staff. Just keeping those of us representing the District of Columbia on the commission. I'd like to know, who those conversations, with whom they're being had, and just be kept in the loop. If that's not too much to ask, I'd appreciate it.
Certainly, yeah. Both Ms. Rott and our Secretary Julia Acosta are our point people for our equity work. So I'll certainly make sure that they contact you and keep you abreast.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Wright.
Well, I think there's a lot about, we're talking about NCPC's plan right now, right? Not our own agencies. Yeah.
Unless you'd like to share some insights, but yep, our focus is on our plan.
Okay, all right, good. So I heard a couple of things that I thought were really good. I did not hear the September presentation because I had to drop for some reason, which I can't remember now. So this is my first engagement with it. Speaking of which, early engagement, yes. Tools to assist, yes. I'm coming at this, it's no secret, as at all of it as a fierce advocate for design quality. And so to me, this is second nature. Good design is for everyone. Good design is inclusive. And from the very first thought of project formulation, it addresses inclusivity, diversity of use, all these things, right? So this feels second nature to me, and I'm a little bit over the top because I sometimes think there's not a problem that good design can't solve, but I think unintended consequences are a thing. And so the focus on we like to think that all of these criteria that are aimed at diversity, inclusion, etc., are inherent to a design, to a quality matrix, but it's a good thing to provide tools and prod nevertheless. And so it's, again, I think the tools and the early engagement, we preach that in the design world all the time. Just engage early. Think very early on in the process, because if you're trying to fix it at the 11th hour, it's too expensive and it's too late. So it all sounds right to me, is what I'm saying. And I do, I have 3 kids, millennial kids, who are constantly rapping me for being a boomer, and how boomers, kind of screwed it up for them. And I'm always arguing with them. Well, yeah, but they were unintended consequences of progress. And so to stop and be more deliberate is never a bad thing.
Thank you very much for those
Here,
comments.
here.
Is Commissioner Dixon with us today? We'll move to Commissioner Cash.
So just building a little bit on the earlier question. So the council has put a new requirement in our rules that every bill that gets adopted by the DC Council has to go through racial equity impact analysis, and that's been really helpful to the council. So, and I'm sure that you all have reached out or at least talked to the folks in our office that have done some really good work. I will just say, with regard to the question I asked earlier about that interaction, so the council, when we adopted our local comprehensive plan, we had a lot of advocates that were out there that were upset with one piece or another, and they eventually then came to the commission to try and push those. I think it was issues of that with flooding and floodplains and all of that. They came to NCPC to try and kind of push those concerns. And I think the commission did a good job at the time of kind of drawing that line of what's an NCPC role when it comes to these district projects and what is the local role. And I think that the commission handled it well at that time. So I would just suggest building that in as you're developing your plans, just understanding how those equity analyses can have an impact on what we're doing here. And I think that working with OP, the mayor's racial equity office, I think that will be a good opportunity just to make sure we're getting it right with regard to DC plans. I also say I think there's a lot of value added when it comes to federal projects that are in the district. So I think of the work we've been doing on JBAB, and it's right there in the community, and having a better understanding of what those federal projects, how they might impact the greater community when it comes to the district, I think is something that the district has no other control over. So that's a good venue to be able to look at how those plans are affecting things. So just some thoughts. I think that overall it's great that you're moving forward with implementing this. I think it's going to provide a lot of valuable information for us when we're deliberating on these issues.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Davis.
The presentation, no additional comments from me.
Thank you. Commissioner Davenport.
Thank you for doing this work. Thank you for, especially for insights about how this is actually going to come before the board, so we can sort of frame our understanding and thinking about this, and definitely would echo Commissioner Wright's comments on support and providing implementation materials whenever, wherever possible for this. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Steingasser.
Thank you. I found this really helpful, and I really appreciate the amount of work that went into it. And as we've been working with this in the district, especially in the world of zoning and development, there's just such a range of ways to think about this, from the 30,000 feet big policy all the way down to the weeds. And there's an equity lens to be applied at every level. And I've just found it to be a really good reminder just to stop and think about it, because so much of what we do, at least at our level in experience, is intuitive. And we forget to say the obvious, or we forget to document the obvious of how we got from A to B. And I have found this to be a very rewarding stop and think and look back on this. So I really appreciate the work that NCPC staff has done on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner McMahon.
Thanks. Appreciate both presentations, especially the overview from Ms. Dalal, very enlightening and a good reminder of what we're about and where we should be heading, and then the details about NCPC's approach. Also appreciate listening to comments from other commissioners as we continue to work on this key initiative, and looking forward to support it in the future. Thanks. Over.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to say that I am incredibly proud of the work that NCPC is doing to advance equity, and articulating what our own practices should be, how we can continue to improve. And I really look forward to this work. I appreciated also that Ms. Halal pointed out that this is generational work. It's something that is going to take a sustained commitment. And Ms. Steingasser, I love that stop and think. It really is a time to do that. And I think our staff has done a really great job in putting together a plan that aligns and supports the efforts of other federal agencies and regional jurisdictions. As we work through the details, it's really exciting to be a part of advancing equity across federal agencies with all of the agencies that we work with. And I appreciate President Biden's executive order to have us all focus on this. And the definition will continue to evolve. Our efforts will evolve, but having some long-term view, but also very specific action items that we can implement right away, I thought was a really helpful part of the plan. So with that, are there any other comments or questions before we move on to our next agenda item? Hearing none, thank you, everyone. And now we have a second information presentation, agenda item 6B, and it will be an update on the Washington Union Station expansion project, and we will hear from Mr. Fliss. Welcome, Mr. Fliss.
Thank you. And good afternoon, commissioners. Hopefully you can see my presentation.
Yes.
So today I will be providing a short refresher and update on the Washington Union Station expansion project, which you last saw back in 2020. While it has been 2 years since you saw this project, there has been a lot of ongoing coordination among the project stakeholders, and we anticipate that the Federal Railroad Administration, or FRA, will submit a revised concept for your review for the July meeting. Prior to then, as the chair mentioned, we'll be setting up a site visit for the commission. And so this is an opportunity for you to refamiliarize yourself with the project. So just as a reminder, here you can see Washington Union Station highlighted here in yellow, located just north of the US Capitol building and the National Mall. near the intersection of Massachusetts Avenue and Delaware Avenue. So Washington Union Station is the second busiest station in the Amtrak network. It includes the high-speed Acela Express, as well as the Northeast Regional rail service. As you know, VRE and MARC also operate at the station, as well as a variety of local and regional buses. And of course, there is the Union Station Metro Rail stop. So I think you'll recall that this is a very complex site. It includes the historic station located here, a bus facility, as well as a parking garage. All of these are located on federal land and maintained by the Union Station Redevelopment Corporation, or USRC. The historic station building here includes retail and restaurants and is subject to a sublease. However, this building is not proposed to be altered as part of this project. The track facilities are controlled by Amtrak, located here behind the station. To the north, DDOT owns and maintains the H Street or Hopscotch Bridge that's highlighted in purple. And then to the south, the National Park Service maintains jurisdiction over Columbus Circle. Some other components to point out, of course, WMATA controls the rail tracks that enter and exit to the Union Station Metro Rail stop. And then finally, there are private air rights located above the tracks. Those are hatched here above the station tracks themselves. And these are owned by Ackridge. So as a reminder, the USRC oversees the station operations and maintenance, which includes maintaining the station as a multimodal transportation center and also enhancing the retail and amenity opportunities within the station. I'll just quickly mention that there has been recent news about the eminent domain action by Amtrak regarding the station. We understand that this would not impact this project since it relates primarily to the subleased rights within the historic station itself. The project team may be able to speak more to this at the July concept review, but just a reminder that NCPC does not review interiors and the historic station exterior is not proposed to be changed as part of the expansion project. So moving on to the expansion project itself, just as a reminder, the station, pre-pandemic saw about 40 million visitors each year, and the project proponents expect, significant growth through 2040. The project seeks to support that future growth in rail service, facilitate intermodal travel, promote a positive user experience, and support the continued historic preservation and use of that historic station building while improving rail capacity, reliability, and safety for users. So the major project components include reconfiguration of the station tracks, a new train hall, bus facilities, as well as parking. Other major project components include new concourses, rail support spaces, as well as a variety of pedestrian and bicycle access improvements. There's also expected to be improved pickup and drop-off areas for vehicles in several locations. And I think you'll remember from the 2020 review that the biggest parts of this project really are the parking facility, the bus facility, and then the new train hall. So here you can see the original preferred alternative, which you saw back in 2020. This alternative includes a new east-west train hall that's highlighted here in blue. This is just north of the historic station building. There would also be a new bus facility that's highlighted here in purple, as well as a parking facility in yellow located here. And these are basically in the same location where they're located today. So this was, again, back in 2020, what the commission saw. So when you review the project at that concept review, and later during discussions that we had regarding the EIS, the commission did express concerns and provided comments on a couple key areas. First, you did express support for the improvements to the transportation facilities overall. However, you noted that the amount of parking in particular seemed excessive, and you asked that the project team look at reducing the parking count given the multimodal nature of the project. In addition, the commission found that and provided comments regarding the kind of urban design approach and experience that the proposed alternative was creating, particularly due to that large parking facility located above the tracks. finding that it didn't really seem to relate well to the surrounding air rights development to be developed in the future. And then finally, you also found that further coordination was necessary, particularly with the district agencies and the owner of the adjacent air rights development to address a lot of these challenges. So given all of that and the comments received through the EIS process and internal review, FRA has been working closely with a number of stakeholders, including the district and Ackridge, to revise the project layout. So recently, FRA did share with the consulting parties 3 potential changes to the project. I'm going to walk you through those big moves, just using the previous preferred alternative to show you what the potential changes are going to be. Of course, we're going to see these come with a formal submission from FRA for your review, but this will just give you a sense of some of the changes that we expect to see. So for the first 2 big ones are, one, the reduction in parking, potentially up to around 50% reduction from what you saw in 2020. So that's a big change. The second is that the parking is proposed to be moved. As I mentioned, it was previously located in a structure above the tracks, similar to how it functions today. However, FRA has indicated they are proposing to move it underground, which would move it out of the space here. And so this is just a section that shows you how that move could happen. The parking again today is located in a structure above the tracks. It potentially would be moved below grade here. This would also be paired with the new pickup and drop-off facility that will help address some of the concerns about access to the station for visitors and passengers. And then another big move that the consulting parties heard about was the reconfiguration of the new bus facility that's previously, again, was stacked with the parking garage, very similar to how the function operates today. You can see it here in purple. The FRA has indicated that their updated approach will actually rotate and reorient the bus facility in this location here, aligned east to west with the new train hall. And this again starts to free up this area, formerly that large structure, for some future development. The other interesting thing about this move is it starts to connect the bus facility, the train hall, and the platforms beneath in a more direct way. And so I think staff is very interested to see how this functions. It seems to have the opportunity to provide a better connectivity for multimodal connectivity for passengers and station users. So as I mentioned, these big moves do have implications for what happens above the tracks, particularly if the parking is moved underground, the bus facility is reoriented, would begin to free up this area for some kind of other kind of development, and also lends itself to a different urban design approach that could allow for better coordination with the adjacent air rights development, which is over here on this side. So that's just a high level overview of some of the changes that we expect to see with future concept submission. Of course, we will be waiting for that submission for the July meeting, and we'll be able to look further into the details from the project team. In the meantime, I do want to just mention a few other things in terms of next steps. FRA did indicate they're going to be restarting the Section 106 and NEPA process to include a revised alternative that reflects these kind of big changes that I've mentioned. As the chair mentioned, we are also going to be coordinating a site visit with you all to see the current operations and talk a little bit more about how the station could operate in the future. This should include the project proponents as well as Ackridge to talk about also the private development. And then, as I mentioned throughout the presentation, we do expect the FRA will be submitting for that revised concept review in July. So we'll have more information about the project plans at that point. So with that, that concludes my presentation and an overview of what to expect over the next few months. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fliss. Are there any questions for Mr. Fliss? Sorry about that.
Yes.
Commissioner May.
Oh, no. Commissioner Wright said yes first, so she should.
But I'm sorry, I saw your hand. I didn't see.
Oh,
Sorry,
I didn't-
Commissioner Wright, please go ahead.
I didn't use the raise the hand function, sorry.
No.
I have two questions. Not one, I don't, but this is just not necessarily looking for an answer. The bus, how I will be interested to see how the reorientation of the bus facility is not a barrier. Because the way it's looks, I can, if it's lined with buses, that will be important for them to emphasize, to help us understand why it doesn't create a barrier in between the facilities. One, two, I want to confirm, you said they are reducing parking by 50%,
Yes,
but putting it what remains under the ground.
correct.
Okay, that's good. Because I was gonna say, well, who cares if they put it under the ground if it's the same amount?
Yeah.
Okay, and then my third question is are these people, are they actually talking to each other? Because my recollection was that this was a glaring problem, that there was massive dysfunction among all of the people who need to collaborate on this project. Is that from the commission's point of view or the staff's point of view? Is that
Yes.
have we made some progress?
Yes, it
Okay.
appears we've made significant progress. and
Okay, good.
We're hoping to hear, we will certainly hear that from FRA. We're hoping to also hear from some of the other parties that have been involved. So I think, yes, there has been progress, and some of that has resulted in these big changes, which we were happy to hear about.
Yes, that is very good news. Okay, Mr. May, please forgive me.
Commissioner May.
Thank you. So my question has to do with what did get the press recently about Amtrak's condemnation move. And I mean, I understand that it's not, they say it's not going to affect this and that it's interior only. But my question is still like, what is it? What are they trying to do? Because it seemed to me that it was something that had to do with operations, and if it has to do with operations, and it seems like it has the potential to affect what we would be reviewing. So maybe can you tell us more?
Yeah, not too much more, because obviously we're not part of that that legal action, but we did ask FRA about this, and they did indicate that they did not believe it's going to impact this project. The limited understanding that we have, and certainly FRA will be able to speak to this more, is that Amtrak is looking at some of the operations in the station. Two things. One is the existing concourse, how that functions, where their ticketing is today, because they do have some leased rights there. The second portion is actually beneath the station itself, which is related to the tracks underneath the station. So those things would be impacted by some, ownership issues, but would not be subject to NCPC review. And they do not impact the components of the project that we've talked about today, the expansion project. So.
Okay, and
so I see that Ms. Schuyler has raised her hand. So Ms. Schuyler, would you like to add to the answer?
I would, in the sense that Commissioner May, I have been able to obtain the pleadings that Amtrak filed, and they're especially helpful because by way of describing the area condemned, they use pictures. And I would be happy to forward a copy of that so that you can get a clear indication of what and what not they would be condemning.
Okay, that actually would be very helpful. When you first mentioned the idea of pleadings, I was thinking, oh my God, the last thing I'd want to do is read a pleading. But if there are pictures, then I'm all in.
Well, I think the pictures are in the first 3 pages, and if it's just the areas that you're interested in, you should be able to read that and look at the pictures and get a quick sense of what it is they are condemning. If you want to read more, be my guest.
Oh, no, that's okay. Thank you. Hopefully I will get it from the pictures And I do appreciate that. And you know, maybe it's just my natural tendency to worry about things that, you know, worry beyond what's in front of us and think about these other things. I assume that when this comes forward, and we have the presentation in July, we won't be hearing anything from Amtrak objecting to these development plans, that they remain supportive of that.
Yeah, that's our understanding, because Amtrak is one of the project proponents. So obviously they need to be working, they're all working together, FRA, Amtrak, and USRC. So that's our expectation.
Okay. All right. Well, I really do hope that pans out exactly that way. Again, I have this natural tendency to worry. So
Sure.
I appreciate more information on that. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Are there any other questions from commissioners before we go to discussion?
Yeah, I have one question.
Commissioner Cash.
So do we know at this point if, because I mean, these are pretty major reconfigurations from what's been contemplated for the last however many years the saga has been going on, but specifically with requests to the H Street tunnel. So under the Hopscotch Bridge, there's a tunnel. Once upon a time, there was a thought that DC might utilize that with respect to the streetcar because there's connectivity there to Union Station Metro Rail station. Do these plans change the possible utilization at all for the H Street tunnel, or is that still probably going to be off limits for any other use?
I probably can't speak to that. That might be a detail I don't know at this point, but we can certainly reach out to FRA and find out. My understanding is that it does not alter what you saw previously in terms of having that additional concourse on the north end of the project that would allow for some connectivity at street level underneath the tracks in that location. But I would have to follow up and find out further about the H Street, but I can do that.
Great, thanks.
This is so helpful for these information presentations. So Mr. Fliss can present these questions to the applicant and we can hear the answers directly when they come to present. It's really helpful. If there are no other questions, I'd like to open it up to the commission for discussion and ask that everyone please turn on your cameras. I'd like to start with Commissioner Cash and then go in a round robin format. So Mr. Cash.
Well, thanks so much for the presentation. This has been a fascinating saga, as I alluded to, of working on this over the years. And I do think this is another great case that illustrates that the comments that we make at these meetings and the work of the staff and working with these applicants can really drive some positive change. The last time that we had the applicant here on this project, I think that we didn't mince words in saying how disappointed we were with things like the parking and with the rideshare bus, all that stuff. And it looks like they actually took it to heart. So I just want to thank you for the information presentation, for all the work that's gone on to get us to this, what will hopefully be a much better place when this comes back before us. So thanks.
Thank you. That's a very important point. Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, I just want to echo Commissioner Cash. I appreciate the presentation. Looking forward to following up on this and seeing how it turns out. Thanks.
Commissioner Davenport.
No further comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Steingasser.
Yes, thank you. And I also want to thank the staff for this early presentation. I think this has been a good teaser for what's coming, and I look forward to it. I know the city staff has also worked extensively on this project, and I know there's a lot of devil in the details yet to come out, but overall, I think this is a very positive move. I agree that there's some operational issues about the new bus facility. And also with the circulator, I know there's still some details to be worked out there, but we look forward very much to seeing this move forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner McMahon.
Well, thanks for the presentation. I have no comments.
Commissioner May.
Yes, thank you very much for the information presentation. It's good to get a sort of a sneak preview of how things are changing. We had heard that there had been significant progress in addressing the concerns of the commission and others from the previous reviews, and that in fact all the many parties involved seem to be now singing from the same sheet of music. So I'm hopeful that what we will see is a very very positive reaction to the new alternative when it comes through, and that we will all be able to join in supporting it rather than having to push back against it. It is good to know that when we push back on things that there is some reaction to it, and Commissioner Cash pointed that out. NCPC does play an important role in these things. So I'm pleased that there was some effect from that, and that hopefully is moving now in a much more positive direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Argo.
Hi, I just had I have one quick question that had to do with the, but I can ask staff about this, had to do with the bus lines. I was very curious about whether the anticipated changes in, in the bus depot part of this would include interstate bus lines. Does anybody know if that's part of the, if that's part of the deal, like a lot of the buses that go to New York and all of this, which those of us who take those buses now have to go to Bethesda.
Yes, that's correct. The bus facility does accommodate that kind of interregional bus.
Interregional,
yeah.
Bus, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. A personal interest. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Commissioner Wright.
I don't have anything more. I'll wait to see. I just would like them to, explain the bus thing. Not the same as Commissioner Argo's questions.
No. Understood.
Thank you. Well, with that, I would just like to add, while we haven't seen the actual submission, I am really pleased to hear that all of the parties are coming together around a unified vision for the area, that they're listening. This will be one of the most significant transformations in Washington over the next couple of decades. So I know we're all looking forward to seeing this. Sounds like FRA, USRC have recognized the detrimental impacts of a massive parking garage above ground. And as you noted, at the busiest multimodal center in DC. So I'm excited to see how the relocation of the parking underground, the overall parking reduction, how it changes the design, hearing their responses to the questions about how this will all function and how the various modes of transportation can be enhanced by these new ideas. So we're looking forward to the July submission and upcoming site visit. Thank you, Mr. Fliss. And if there are no further questions, this really concludes our open session agenda. Our next regular commission meeting will be on Thursday, June 2nd, 2022 at 1 p.m. So if there's no other further business, our session is now adjourned. Thanks, everyone.